So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Parent Academy. This is the Parent Academy presentation into adulthood. Throughout the year, we hear back from parents throughout the school year about the kinds of topics they want to hear more about. Of course, our schools give out communication and support for parents through our counseling office and our teachers. However, they sometimes say, parents, that they need additional information, especially parents of high school students that are in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. They're really anxious to hear what's coming next. What can they expect as they go through this journey of high school into post-secondary options and opportunities. So with that, I'm going to turn over the presentation Launching into Adulthood to Ms. Kay Malone, the supervisor of school counseling, and her staff, who are going to walk our parents through what needs to be what you need to be aware of as you progress through high school to support your child's success and preparation for getting ready for college, work, and life. So, Ms. Malone.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Appreciate that fine introduction. And I am fortunate to be here with some veteran staff that work in our local high schools. So I'd like to introduce them. First, we have Ms. Katizi Henderson, who is school counselor at Joppatown High School. Kathleen Gibbons, who unfortunately can't be here tonight, but she was an important part of developing this evening's presentation. And she's a school counselor at Sea Mountain Wright High School. And then last but not least, we have Amber Ellis, school counselor at Fallston High School, and she does serve as department chair at Fallston. And she will be advancing our slides tonight and sharing the presentation. So I do want to give a special shout out for that because then I don't have to do it. So one of the very first important things that I would like to say as you all help your students, your children, your young adult children, I should say, launching it to adulthood is to encourage them to really develop and sustain a relationship with their school counselor. And this can typically start as early as 8th grade during our registration season, which does begin typically at the end of January, beginning of February. Every high school is a little different with their timetable, but that is a time when high school counselors, Ms. Ellis, can you go back one, please? I'm sorry. When high school counselors do typically classroom presentations now with the pandemic last year, we had to get creative, and we did because we were able to do some parent evening nights, and some of that will continue because we found the feedback from those were very positive because you could do that then from your home like this one. So that relationship does begin with our rising 9th graders, our current 8th graders. And then that would continue on through when the high school tenure, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year. The one reason why I would always encourage my students, especially as a 9th grader, to start making appointments to see me if they were on my caseload was so that I could get to know them, to really know what their interests are, what their strengths are, what they are thinking in terms of what do I want to do not only in high school, but what are my possible post-secondary planning. And later, Ms. Ellis is going to discuss the platform that we call Naviance, which helps us really hone in on those skills and strengths, and then career planning, post-secondary planning and career planning. So the relationship your student has with their school counselor is very important. And it's very difficult for us if we don't know your student senior year, because there are things that come across our desk in the school counseling office, which might include other things besides career planning, but things like scholarships or experiences or part-time jobs that maybe could launch into more of a career. APG is a good example of sometimes they have opportunities and experiences for kids who may be interested in, STEM kind of arenas. And if we don't know that your student is interested in that, perhaps we would not be able to communicate. We send general communications out, But if I have a really strong relationship with the student and I know that they're interested in secondary STEM careers, then I'm going to be on the lookout for those and make sure they get in the right hands. The other
Ms. Malone,
relationship.
can I interrupt for just a moment? For those that have just joined, if you could please go ahead and mute your mics and turn off your video cameras so that we can have our focus on Ms. Malone and her staff, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The other relationship that's really important is with you all, because you are the ones that, we work with the kids during the school day, but as parents, and I have 4 children, they all did go through Harford County Public School System. They are all graduated from college and also gainfully employed. So, that really springboard not only includes the school counselor, but also we as parents. And it doesn't mean we do everything, because we have knowledge as school counselors that you perhaps do not have. But, just that some emotional support perhaps, or helping them begin to develop those relationships, not only with school counselors, but also teachers, because teachers are also talking to students about what they might want to do as they launch into adulthood. Now, Amber, you can advance. Thank you. So I mentioned some of these already, but these are very key factors in helping to support this launch. And this launch is a process. We know that adolescents develop and mature during high school years, and it's the same with their secondary planning. They may start out in 8th grade thinking they're going to be one thing, and then by the time they hit senior year, because of all these experiences and the support that you see on the screen in front of you, may choose a different path, and that's okay. It's just really important for high school students to have that career plan, even if they change it. We know with research that students who have some sort of plan, which is flexible, because you might not know in 8th grade who you want to be or what you want to do, and that's okay. But we know if you have a tentative plan, that the research is clear that you do better academically, because you have this goal that you set, and you know that your high school grades are going to be an important part of being able to attain that goal. So we list family and community support, because we know that community support could come, for instance, if you have affiliation with churches or Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts, volunteering in a local hospital. All these things can help impact students as they develop their career plans. I mentioned school counselor. I briefly mentioned teacher support. Most of our curriculum, our content curriculum, has an aspect of, and I'll pick on science, where science careers may be explored or touched upon and discussed. One of the great things we have in Harford County related to science, since I'm picking on that as just an example, is Harford Glen, which can really spur an interest in environmental science or environmental engineering. We have many, many more in all content areas. That's just one example. Then we have Naviance, which we're going to highlight a little bit later. College Board, so it's collegeboard.com. They have a great timeline that I believe covers 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, with some ideas of throughout those calendar years, what activities you might and your student might be participating in, and that comes from the collegeboard.com website. We also have experiences such as apprenticeships and technical experiences, and Ms. Henderson will speak to that, as well as military. And finally, I just want to finish with the value of part-time jobs. Now, can be a balancing act, because we know that academics is a priority. And for some students, if they have a part-time job, maybe that would take away from that. However, what my experience has shown, especially if the student really likes their part-time job, it actually can help them with their academics. For instance, they have a structured time where they go home after school and they have to get their homework done, because then they have to go to their part-time job. So it actually can add some structure to a downtime schedule, where maybe a student could procrastinate from, let's say, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and maybe not feel like they have to be in a certain area of time to get those assignments done. The other value in part-time jobs is learning those soft skills and learning those soft skills early, and also feedback, positive and also constructive criticism from employers that really can help with that maturation and understanding of what it means to hold a job. So with that, we're going to get a little bit more specific. That was sort of a general overview, and we are going to begin with the 2- and 4-year college process. And I'm going to turn it over to one of our fine school counselors in Harford County, Miss Amber Ellis.
Hi, thank you so much, Faye. So I'm going to be talking about Naviance this evening. Naviance is a great tool that we use in our middle school and high school, and it is our major tool that we use for our post-secondary planning. So what is Naviance? It is a web-based platform that we use for post-secondary planning. The main areas that we focus on in Naviance would be self-exploration, career research, and then the college research. Students are going to gain access to their Naviance accounts in middle school, so typically around 6th grade. We do have a scope and sequence, a mandated scope and sequence that we use from middle school into high school, and I'm going to kind of briefly talk about what that looks like. But students do get it. It varies from middle school, but when students are introduced to Naviance, but they are introduced to it at the middle school level, but you're going to see the most usage at the high school level. And the great thing about that is that students are going to, as they kind of go through and do different activities, everything is saved within their profile and their account. So it builds upon each year, and students can go back, they can redo certain surveys, build upon more self-exploration, and it's just a really great tool. So students can log in from school and from home, and I actually have a link on this page. So if you simply Google Naviance, it will take you to that. It'll take you to the College and Career Readiness Technology Solution. So that's kind of the official title. And students, it will ask you to, I think the first page is to log in as a student, and then it will ask for a zip code, and it will be zip code. The student should be able to populate or pull up their school name, and then from there log in as a student and their user name and password. So if your student needs help or assistance logging into their account, then you can always contact your school counseling office and they can assist you with it. But the username would be the 6-digit student ID, and the password is a password that would have been a student would have set it to. If they did not go through that process yet or forgot it, they can select forgot, and it will send them a reset to their email. So those are the basics of Naviance. So what does it look like at each grade level? And this is obviously more focused on the high school level. So for 9th grade, we really utilize Naviance really just for some self-exploration activities. They have lots of different surveys, and there's an option for us to do some goal setting. So 9th grade is so much about transitioning into high school and helping students establish kind of what they want their high school career to start looking like. So the focus is going to be on understanding your GPA and earning credits. And then your goals, start thinking about and envisioning what you want to look like, what you want life to look like after you graduate. So goal setting is, and that kind of self-discovery is the major focus in 9th grade. 10th grade, as you can see, each year we build upon. So obviously we can continue to do goal setting and self-discovery, but then we kind of transition into the career exploration. So for example, you, as a counselor, I may do the career interest profiler, which is a survey where students are kind of a personality survey, where students are given their John Holland code, which is, again, kind of associated with those, with the personality type and prevalent careers within those certain types. And then students can do some research on possible career pathways based on what their code and what their survey results show. And then it transitions into 11th grade. So we take that information from 10th grade, thinking about those career pathways and what kind of education and training would a student need to achieve that career and pathway. And that's where we transition into the college and educational research part. And again, students can, so we can research 2-year, 4-year, and even technical schools within Naviance. So that's really important to reiterate that this is not just a tool for students who are college bound. This is a tool that is for all students to really kind of explore, do that self-exploration, career exploration, and then understand what the educational piece would be needed for those careers. And then finally in 12th grade, so if you are a student that is going to be looking at, well, any kind of education with beyond high school, so that really gives us a chance to refine that educational research part. So for students who are considering applying to 2-year and 4-year schools, even technical schools, so they are going to be able to utilize Naviance as a senior to help them with that application process. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the application process in another slide. So for example, the college application process. So we've been helping our seniors really since the beginning of the school year prepare using Naviance and some of the other websites that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So Naviance really transitions from that research tool to kind of being helping with the application process. So it is actually where we hold and store things like transcripts, school profiles. So the school profile kind of explains the transcript, letters of recommendation, and any kind of forms that may need to accompany an application. So I'm going to talk about Common App, which is one of the portals used for applications for colleges. So all of those we call those supporting documents would be housed in Naviance. And then when a student does apply to a 2-year or 4-year or technical school, then we can send those documents all electronically. So what is sent through Naviance, and then what is used with some of our other sites? Naviance, so for example, we are going to house the transcripts, letters of recommendation, Common App teacher and counselor forms, and the school profile that accompanies the transcript. And those are all things that we work with our students to make sure that they are collected within Naviance. Other sites that we utilize for that application process would be for SAT scores, so College Board, which I know Kay mentioned just a few minutes ago. Or ACT scores. So for either one of those websites, it would be collegeboard.org or ACT.org. Students would need to, if they decide to or are required to share their test scores, would need to access their test scores through those websites and those personal accounts and send or request that their scores be sent to whatever institution they are applying to. In Naviance, students are going to submit a request to a teacher for a letter of recommendation, and then teachers will upload their letters of recommendation to Naviance. So in that, for letters of recommendation, there's a student responsibility part and a counselor responsibility. And then college applications. So colleges have gotten kind of the college application process, it's definitely evolved since many of us were in college. But one of the really cool tools that colleges utilize now are Common App and Coalition, which are the two main application portals. So students are able to do one application and then send it to many different schools. Now, it might be more in depth. So for example, Common App, which is a very common one, I would even go as far as to say it might be a little more user-friendly than Coalition, but the Common App one definitely is becoming the front runner. So for example, if your student is applying to, let's say, 4 colleges, and all 4 use, or I would say even if 2 of those 4 colleges use Common App as a possible application portal, then we recommend that students use that, because it's going to be 1 application versus 2 applications. And sometimes it really kind of allows students to apply to more schools because it is that 1 application. So you may have a student that is able to do 1 application and send it out to 5 or more schools. So in that sense, it really kind of streamlines the application process. And then Naviance will allow, actually kind of communicates with Common App, and I'll explain that more through the application process. So Naviance will match up to a student's Common App application, so that when students submit their application through Common App and even Coalition, then the documents can still be stored in Naviance and sent electronically, and then they can be matched up at that institutional level for the review process. So juniors are really starting, counselors are starting to have a lot more conversations with our juniors at this point of the school year, because juniors are already starting to think about what they need to do to prepare for their senior year. So I know myself and many other counselors around the county are meeting with juniors to kind of share this timeline. And sometimes it certainly can start earlier, but we really encourage our juniors to really start thinking about this timeline as they prepare for their senior year. So really from now into January, we encourage students to sign up for an SAT or ACT. The websites are also included. Many schools this year and last year have been test optional. We'll see this spring, I'm sure schools will start to announce if what their testing option will be for the next application season. But I really don't like my seniors to be stressed and worried about taking any kind of test during their senior year, or at least SAT or ACTs. So we really like to focus on that during the junior year. So I recommend 2 scores are ideal. If a student is able to get a winter testing date, like a January, and then maybe a second testing date later in the spring, like a May or June, that would be ideal. Obviously, we know with COVID restrictions right now, that could be a little challenging. So really, even just 1 test score is going to give a student an option, especially if they have a school that is going to require a test score next year. And then kind of transition into February to focus on using Naviance to do that college research. Supermatch is a great tool that I always encourage any of my students are doing college research. We talk about using Supermatch, so they have over 30 different criteria that students can filter through, and then it cross-references their criteria with all of the schools in Naviance, which are thousands. So it's a great tool. It really can highlight what, based on the students' criteria, what would be a good fit for them. And there's obviously other tools within Naviance that students can utilize, and they can always talk to their counselors about how to kind of navigate through those tools in Naviance. But Naviance is a great tool, and also I know College Board has some research tools as well. And then as we kind of transition into the spring and through the summer, March and August, we really want students to be refining that college search, set up college visits. Colleges are open, and as long as students, families feel comfortable and safe, then it's a great opportunity for students to get on campus, take a tour. A lot of times tour guides are students. Try and see if they can envision themselves living on that campus for 4 years, and then talking to people in the admissions and some of the people in different departments at the university level to see what different majors have to offer. if you're an athlete, if you have a student athlete and they're considering, going to a Division I or Division II school, then they would need to register with the NCAA. And I'm sure their coaches can kind of talk them through that process. We also encourage students to have a student resume. And student resumes are really a great marketing tool for students to use with their letters of recommendation. So I know the counselors at Falston, and I know many other counselors require our students to create a resume. And that really is for us to also kind of get to know our students on on multiple levels, and that way we can include those special details and highlight all the strengths of those students in their letters of recommendation. So when students do request a letter of recommendation from a teacher or a counselor, then we ask that they also send us their student resume, and that resume is really going to focus on their honors and awards, what kind of activities that they've participated in throughout their high school career, and then also any kind of volunteering and part-time employment they may have had. And that really allows us to kind of paint that whole picture of a student. And then college essays. So college essays topics will start coming out in the spring, and students can certainly look those essays up. They'll be posted possibly on a school admissions page, and Common App will release theirs. And it gives students some extra time to start brainstorming and thinking about how they want to really kind of really share their voice and have an admissions person kind of get to know who they are beyond their transcripts. And then in September, counselors are back in the classroom, meeting with seniors, going over that college application process, talking about how letters of recommendation and how we use those portals together. So Common App, Coalition, Naviance, and what that whole process looks like once we put it together. And then October, November, December, it is application season. So students are going to be working on those applications and submitting for those deadlines. And then FAFSA. We encourage all students to apply to FAFSA. Even students' families are, you're never committed to any of those loans or it's just going to give you it gives schools and your family an understanding of what your financial obligation looks like as far as college goes. And maybe, a lot of times families discover that they may have access to different kinds of grants or work study programs that they never knew were even an option. So we really encourage students and families to apply to that as well. So that's really the timeline that we share with juniors. And then when they get into senior year, we kind of fine-tune this timeline and go over some other details as it kind of transitions from junior year to senior year and as the senior year progresses. So what does that college application process look like? So like I said before, so students are going to actually work on their application, whether it's through Common App, Coalition, or directly through the institution's website. There certainly are schools that only want students to apply through their website. If you're using Common App actually does match up with Naviance. So when you go into your Naviance account and you've already done your Common App, you've inputted your schools, there's going to be a page under the college tab, and it's colleges I'm applying to. So that's really the focus of where students are going to be working in their senior year. There's a match button. And if you click on that match button, it will walk you through matching up your Common App and Naviance account. And then it will populate all of your schools that you've put into Common App already. So it saves you a step, which is really nice. And then once you're in Naviance, so for the schools who are for schools who are or students who are not using Common App, you will need to go into Naviance and add the schools that you are applying to. Once you've added those schools, you can then students can go ahead and request letters of recommendation. So under that college tab, students will see a drop-down menu where it says teacher recommendations, and it will take them to another screen where the students can then request through a drop-down bar or menu, it will populate all the teachers, staff members in their school, and students can then select the teacher that they have already spoken to about a letter of recommendation, and then send that request. That request is going to send an email to that teacher, where the teacher can then upload their letter of recommendation right to Naviance. And then for step number 5, students will complete their application, their essays, and any supplements, and submit them through Common App, the coalition, or directly through their institution. If a student does wish to send or share their test scores with the school, they will be responsible for going into their College Board account or ACT account to submit the request for those scores to be shared. So as a school system, you will see in Naviance where it says test scores, but that's not an official test score. Schools do require an official test score, and we don't have access to be able to share that. So that the test scores, if a student does want to share them, our students are going to be responsible for doing that through those private accounts. Once the application is submitted, it is time to request transcripts and supporting documents to be sent. All of these things that are housed in Naviance will need to, we ask that students then send us a request. So through their Naviance account and that college tab, they're going to go back to that list of schools I'm applying to, and there's a button that says request transcripts. Students will then select the schools. They're going to select either, usually starting out at this time of the year, we ask that they select the initial transcript, and then they'll have a list of schools. They can click on the schools that they're submitting their applications for, and then it will then send their counselor a message that student has submitted their applications, and they're then ready to send all of their transcripts and supporting documents. And then the counselor can go in and do their part. Students should then check the status of their recommendations and applications online. So all of this is sent electronically. Students typically they'll get a message from their school saying we've received your application. It will list the items they've received. If they do need something, then at that point, students, there may be a letter, say, if there's a letter of recommendation that possibly hadn't been uploaded yet. That kind of communication will come to students, and then students can follow up with their counselor about any kind of documents that may need to be sent. And then I always encourage students, when in doubt, always check in with your counselor to confirm, that the request was sent, that all the documents were there, and that everything was communicated properly. And then if there's any other steps, so this is a really generalized application process. It may vary from school to school. I know that there's one step that I didn't include, and that's the general transcript request form. Every school handles that a little bit differently, but we do require students to have that form signed by a parent. And I know at Boston, we do one form. We do it in September when we meet with students. We have all of our seniors take it home and have it signed and bring it back into the counseling office. That way, when they do start having, they do want requests or transcripts to be sent to schools, then we already have that parent signature on file that allows us to send their student transcripts to share it with the school. Each school, like I said, might do it a little bit differently. And when your senior gets into their senior year, your student gets into their senior year, counselors are going to kind of go over those details. Now, if your student is applying to HCC, so a 2-year application process, it's a little, obviously it's a more streamlined, and I believe CCBC, which, our Community College of Baltimore County is very similar to this. Students can complete those applications directly through those websites. Hartford.edu would be for HCC. Naviance does have these schools listed. So all of the community colleges in Maryland are going to be listed in Naviance, so students can input those in. and add that to colleges I'm applying to and request those transcripts to be sent. Test scores are a little different. So for test scores for HCC, they actually will accept the MCAP, math, and ELA scores. They also can accept an SAT score. Based on those scores, what a student gets, it can serve as, it will determine if a student needs to take an AccuPlacer test. And I know it may vary from school to school, but most, all the high schools in Harford County have an HCC rep. So you can work with your counselor, your student's counselor, to find out who their HCC rep is. And the counselor and HCC rep will communicate about how they want those test scores to be shared. And then finally, contacting the admission. So for HCC, you can go right to their harford.edu. On their application page, they have actually a place where you can directly make a virtual appointment with the HCC admissions office. I believe they call them MAPS appointment, MAPS. And that's where students will set up an academic advising session with a academic advisor, with a counselor, and kind of talk about what their goals are, and kind of start that signing up registration process for classes. So I'm going to actually, that's my part for the college application process in Naviance. We're going to switch gears now, and Katizi is going to be sharing some other alternative options after high school.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. So we're going to look at we looked at a lot of different things tonight, different things for college, but what are the other options that are alternative to a traditional college or university? So we're going to take a look at different options that that your student can look into, because we all know, everything looks different for everybody, and the good thing is we have choices. Go to the next slide there. So one of the options is military options. The military can offer students many benefits: full-time active duty, part-time reserves, which means full-time you can go in, take the ASVAB test, see what branch you're interested in going into, make that decision, boot camp after you get out of that, and then you can do active duty. You sign for, could be 4 years, 6, it depends, and go along that way. Or you can decide to do part-time reserves. That can be as little as 1 week in a month for those who work and do this as well. Excellent benefits, excellent job security. I find a lot of students have found and had the time to really look into themselves to see what they really want to do, or they may not know what they want to do. And by going through the military, they've really discovered a lot of things and their skills. So this is a great opportunity for anyone if you're not sure what you want to do, or if you're interested in military. Every Harford County Public School offers Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, which we call the ASVAB test, for free. Every school will offer that. If you don't know or don't have a date or didn't hear anything, definitely talk to your school counselors about this, because we do offer it every year. This can help you narrow down, your student can narrow down jobs in and out of the military that they're best suited for, because when this ASVAB test, it actually shows your strengths, things you're good at. So many times I talk to students who they don't know what they want to do. They don't know what they're maybe good at. I may see what they're good at, but it's really good to kind of take a test and see where everything lines up. And then they realize, wow, I am good at this. So it's good to see that as well. Please have them inquire in the school counseling office about it if they're not sure or just want some other options as well and more information about this, okay? You have high quality training in the military, and that can transfer to civilian jobs, that can transfer to anything. That can transfer to, going right back to school and understanding what they're good at. So there's a lot of different things that come with this military opportunities. You get paid job training in almost every area that can be found outside the military. plumbing, electrical, mechanical, doctor, lawyer, engineering, etc., nursing, all of those different things. And definitely now with the cybersecurity, there's a lot of different things that are growing and a lot of different opportunities that are coming up. So again, if you haven't heard anything yet from your schools, which you probably have, but if you haven't, definitely talk to your counselors about the ASVAB test and see when it's going to be taken. You can start taking it in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Okay, and the good thing is if you, once they get their scores back, they take it, they sign up, they take the test, they can decide if they want to keep the scores or not. That's a plus about doing it in school as well. When you do it at, if you go to like a branch and go, you know, to actually see, let's say it's the Navy rep, you go to the Navy rep and you take it there with them, that once you take it, that score is in. But the good thing is at school, you have a choice to keep the score or not. So I think it's very win-win, especially if you're not really sure. So definitely talk to your school counselors about that as well. Now, trade and apprenticeships is another excellent thing that I see students really do well in. Those students who are really good with their hands, they're really good, they want to work outside, they want to work on certain jobs, but they may not know there's so many different kind of trade schools and apprenticeships available, especially in the state of Maryland, which they're doing a very big push for students who are interested in this, or maybe get more information about it. And it's all kind of grants and scholarships. So this is something that definitely, if you're not really sure, but they know, hey, I'm really good with my hands, I'm really good working outside, I'm really good with certain things, this could be an opportunity. Trade schools offer certification in a trade such as electrical, plumbing, and mechanical carpentry, usually between 6 to 18 months to complete. Give or take, sometimes it's more depending on what you're going to do. Many schools offer job placement help after completion of the program. So your student can go in here, get into one of these programs, they can leave and just go right into a job. I've seen it, it happens, it's a strong need. So again, this is something to really look into for your student. Apprenticeships allow students to go directly to work in a trade and earn certifications through on-job training. So you can go and learn directly from someone that's going to mentor you in a trade that you're interested in, and also you're at the same time get job training, paid and job training. You can't beat that. There's a site in front, you can take a picture of it as you're watching this, which I'm sure you're probably taking pictures of a lot of the screens. Go to that website and get more information. There's so much, and there's always new things that are coming about the trade schools and apprenticeships, and also the different things that they're pushing for. I know masonry is one, welding. They're really looking for a lot of students who are interested in these fields, because there is, we find that there's a growing need, but people are not getting into them. So this is a great opportunity as well. Are there any questions? I kind of went through that pretty fast. But are there any questions from any parents about any of the trade schools or anything, opportunities, military, anything that you can think of on top of your head that you may want to, you can either, I don't know if you can unmute or type it in the chat.
So if we could go ahead and have parents put that in the chat, Ms. Henderson, and then we can kind of manage it that way. So if you have any questions, you could go ahead and put that in the chat. That would be great. And we'll answer those questions. But I do have a question about the apprenticeship. So for our system, for Harford County Public Schools, I know you gave us a state website. Is there a resource in Harford County Public Schools specifically that we should look at first, or should we just go to that Department of Labor website?
I would go to the Department of Labor website first, because that, I feel that is always changing and it's updated all the time. So I would go to that first to see the different programs and where they're pushing as well.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
And additionally, I'm sorry, Mary Beth. Additionally, I know that our partnership with Harford Community College, they have really been focused on increasing those opportunities there. So once you access the state site, you may also want to explore the, what is it, Amber, harvard.edu?
Yes. Harford.edu, very good. And so more information about apprenticeships could be there as well. Very good, thank you. We do have a few more minutes. If you have some questions that you'd like to ask, please feel free to put those into the chat. And thinking about the, and actually I think Ms. Henderson put the harvard.edu into the chat. So thinking about the access to Naviance, Ms. Malone, and perhaps others can, Ms. Ellis and Ms. Henderson can answer this question. I know as a parent, sometimes we don't necessarily have the passwords that our students have. It's difficult to get in. Sometimes our students are busy and they just don't want to, you know, necessarily connect us to it. So are there any other ways to get into Naviance for our students' account, or do we really just have to get that password that they have?
So there is a home connection link for Naviance, and so parents can do that. I know that there is a resource for that. I believe it's on the HCPS.org page in resources. Kay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's there. I can try and find it before we hang up and put it in the chat. But I do encourage students to get on with their parents. There's so many tools on there, and I have had parents try to go in and do things through Home Connection for their student, and they're trying to be helpful, and we love helpful parents. But there are so many tools on there that really students need to be utilizing, especially when it comes to the application process. So it just kind of making that time to sit down. We know everyone's busy, you know, especially with teenagers. I have a teenager as well who's working and sports and lots of things. So you're going in a lot of different directions. And so finding maybe some common time to sit down, sharing the password, you know, if they need to do that, the username and password with a parent, just so they can have access if they're continuously working on things or they want to be able to check up on things. But there is a home connection. I will see if I can try and find it on the HCPS.org parent resource page.
And by home connection, we mean that parents can actually set up their own account, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
That would be helpful. But I think to your point, you did remind us as parents of teenagers that we don't necessarily want to do it for them, that's one of those life skills that we heard Ms. Malone talk about, that perhaps they really do take the lead on getting themselves ready to go, for sure. And then you had mentioned SAT. Are students taking PSAT as well?
So students took a PSAT in October. It was Harford County wide, and those scores actually should be accessible now in their College Board account. So if parents haven't already had a chance to access them, they can contact their counselor and find out what they need to do to access those. And that would have been 10th and 11th graders. Then we are, right now, we do not have an SAT day scheduled for Harford County, but you know, we really do encourage families and students to investigate, as long as they feel safe, to see if they can get either an ACT testing date or an SAT testing date. Schools will accept either one. The tests do vary a little bit. So an ACT is scored a little, it has a different kind of scoring, where the highest score you can receive is a 36, and it's got 4 different sections. It includes a science. The SAT is, I think, what we're all probably more traditionally used to. It's got the reading, writing, and math sections, and that scoring has gone back to the 1600 base. So,
well, I think that's really, not to interrupt you, I really think that's a great point that they actually do take both tests, because I think there's an assumption sometimes that they're only going to take the SAT. So thank you for that reminder.
I would check with the individual schools, because it does matter. Individual schools will have different sets of tests that they will accept. Some of them they'll take either. Some of them they just want an SAT 1 or SAT 2. And it really is more geographical. But I do want to remind parents to check the institution of higher education's requirements, because during the pandemic, many of these applications were test optional. So as you research, and if you need help with that, you have a very good resource in school counseling. we can help you with that. But as you research that, if it's test optional, then that's a decision you all can make with your student. Do I really need to take this test to get into the preferred college? Or if it's optional, maybe I have the choice.
Okay, very good. And then also another question I had in the chat, we only have a thank you for this information and they're good to go. So sounds like you did a great job. But that said, I was wondering as you were talking, thinking about the school visits for those 4-year schools, do we have an option to look at 2-year school and walk around the campus and have the student really get a sense of what that feels like? For
Yes,
Hartford Community College.
Yes, and Hartford Community College is planning some on-campus events this year. We do push that out once we know of these through school counseling, and they push that out to their students and families. So be on the lookout for that. We also have information from other community colleges, but if they don't reach out to us, then certainly families can reach out to them, because we do have other community colleges nearby, and given your students' chosen career path, that may be a better option.
Very good.
Yeah, and a lot of other schools do 2-year colleges, 2 junior colleges. A lot of students are opening up information days and open houses and things like that. But also they're doing a lot of virtual. For those who aren't very comfortable, there's a lot of great like 360 virtual tours that you can take anytime. So there's a lot of different options as far as seeing the campus, and you can really get a chance to see it and talk to students. And I've seen a lot of creative things.
Very good. And I had one more question as you were talking. So as we look at schools and options for our students, sometimes our children are very excited about a certain school, but then we see that yearly cost and we see the price tag and we get nervous because they really are excited. So just thinking about as a parent to guide that conversation with your student, knowing what your budget is, knowing what money you have saved or perhaps that you can take on as a loan or the student can afford. Do you even look at those reach schools? I mean, how do you approach that as a parent?
I know for myself. I'm sorry.
I just said that's a great question.
I get this a lot because we have students, some students are like, isn't it cheaper to stay in state? And I want to go to this school, and there's always different, but they may want to go for a certain major and different things. I always encourage them to apply. I always encourage them to definitely try to apply to all the different scholarships, especially if there's deadlines for those scholarships, and continue to apply for scholarships just in general, because you don't know, there's a lot of schools that want our students in Maryland, and there's a lot of programs where they're giving students in-state tuition for out of state. There's a lot of things you just don't know. So I always want to encourage them just to apply and to see what happens. Apply and see if you can, get what can you get, and then compare. Because I don't want them to regret not applying at all.
And
so what I hear you saying, sorry.
Will, some out of state or private institutions, depending on the student and what Khadijah just said, might try to bring it down to an in-state. Now, I'm not talking about Ivy League, but Khadijah and Amber know this, that they also have ways in which they may, if they want a student, be able to assist with that. But I do think having a frank conversation with your student about, your specific family options and resources is also part of launching into adulthood. Because one thing we know is when you come out of college, 4-year college, with a lot of loan debt, and things like that, you may be able to outweigh that with a lesser price tag, but equally as good education, so you're prepared for that career that you've worked so hard towards.
And then one more question I had, thinking of our 9th grade students and our 10th grade students as they go through, what's that GPA that really does make them competitive for a 4-year school?
So GPA is very important. We really try and remind our students that, so their GPA updates every semester, and that semester GPA that follows them from semester to semester becomes their cumulative GPA. Now, if students take weighted courses, such as an AP course or an honors course. And there's a few other courses that are also weighted, and that varies from school to school. That can then boost their GPA above, depending on their grade in that class, it can boost their GPA to above a 4.0. So that's another great way to utilize Naviance, is because you can put your GPA in, and then you can see, based on your GPA, how does that match up with what colleges are looking for in the students they accept. Mm-hmm. So another great tool to utilize, they use scattergrams and all sorts of really cool charts. I wish I could show, I always like to show my parents and my students how those, like what Naviance, all the cool things Naviance can do. But I go in and play around with it, because it will show you, using your SAT score and GPA, how that matches up with the students they accept. But GPA is very important. And then my last thing about GPA is, and I remind my juniors of this, their GPA is going to update at the end of this school year. So it'll update the end of this semester, and then it will update at the end of the school year. That GPA that they have at the end of their junior year is typically the GPA they are sharing with colleges when they apply in October, November, December. So if they struggle a little bit in 9th and 10th grade, it doesn't, they don't have all the way until the end of their senior year to really boost it. So GPA and grades really matter if they're really going to maximize their opportunities with GPA. And, there's certainly struggles and things that happen. COVID, is one of them, but just something for students to keep in mind. Now, students will have on their transcript, their courses will be listed. So colleges can also see, that student maybe has lower than a 4.0, but look at all the honors and AP courses they took. So strength of schedule combined with GPA kind of work together, and can also tell another story about a student. And I think, I always encourage students to have a balanced schedule and take a variety of classes, but to challenge themselves as well. So I think, working along with GPA, so even if a student takes regular classes and gets a 4.0, that's great. But it's also really good to see students that are challenging themselves with higher level courses, even if they don't get an A.
Well, that's really great advice, because I think that we really need to know as parents that starting 9th grade, every effort that the student can make towards doing the best they can to get the best grade they can will really help the outcome. And I think that was great advice, because in my head I was thinking, oh, you have first quarter of senior year, and I'm hearing you, that's not the case. So, well, that's really a wonderful presentation, so helpful, as everyone's saying in the chat. It has been just such great information. And we're hopefully able to give you what you need to help your child succeed and to launch into that successful adulthood. And I've been on this ride. I know Miss Malone's been on this ride. It's a bumpy ride at times, but it's a certainly exciting one too. It really is. And so any last thoughts from our counselors before we close?
I would just say, parents, just with your students, just research, learn, be open to, definitely get into Naviance, definitely, get your passwords, get comfortable with that. Definitely, get outside and tour if possible, and have that communication about finances and money, and just really what the plan is. And the importance that, what they end with for junior year is what their colleges are going to see. So right. Just really have that conversation and have it down and keep having that conversation.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Ms. Malone, the point that you made about the process, it's not a happening, it's a process, right? It takes a while.
Yeah. It's a fun process. Exciting is a good adjective for that. And you are not alone in this process. You have a lot of resources, and now we've touched on some of them, but please reach out to your school counseling office. I can also assist if you need help.
Well, thank you all so much for being here this evening. Thanks for joining the conversation. We know your children will be very successful in this journey, and we're here to help support through that process. So thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time